Imagine a world where the top executives are completely out of touch with the reality of their own companies. They make decisions from the comfort of their ivory towers, unaware of the daily struggles of the employees who keep the wheels turning. That's the world Ethan Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Industries, was living in. But what if one day he decided to step out of his privileged bubble and experience the company from the bottom up? What if he disguised himself as a janitor to uncover the truth about his own workplace? That's the premise of this shocking and heartwarming story, and it's about to change everything you thought you knew about leadership and compassion. In a company where executives are disconnected from the front lines, the janitorial staff is often invisible and overlooked. They work long hours, deal with impossible demands, and rarely receive the recognition they deserve. But when Ethan Hayes decides to go undercover as a janitor, he's in for a rude awakening. He'll witness firsthand the toxic behavior of upper management, the systemic neglect of employee well-being, and the hidden identity of a culture that values profit over people. But amidst all this darkness, there's a glimmer of hope. Emily Rodriguez, a kind-hearted secretary, treats Ethan with genuine respect and warmth, sharing her lunch with him and offering compassion when others turn a blind eye. Her actions will not only change Ethan's perspective, but also lead to a heartwarming twist that will shock everyone at the company gala. This isn't just a story about a CEO finding empathy. It's a tale of unexpected promotion, corporate secrets uncovered, and the power of kindness to transform a company from the inside out. As Ethan's undercover mission unfolds, he'll discover that the true character of his company lies not in the boardroom, but in the hearts of those who work behind the scenes. And when the shocking reveal comes at the gala, it won't just be Ethan's disguise that falls away. So will the illusions of a broken system. Get ready to witness how one act of compassion can spark a revolution in leadership and create a new era of respect and empathy. The story of Ethan Hayes and Emily Rodriguez is about to challenge everything you believe about the corporate world, and it's just the beginning. Ethan Hayes, the brilliant yet increasingly distant CEO of Hayes Industries, sat in his sleek glass office overlooking the city skyline. The company he'd built from the ground up was now a corporate behemoth, but lately, the once thriving morale had been deteriorating faster than he could address it. Quarterly reports showed a 23% drop in productivity, and employee retention was at an all-time low. His management team offered excuses: market competition, economic pressures, but Ethan's gut told him the issue ran much deeper. He remembered the early days when everyone worked like a family, sharing victories and setbacks with equal passion. Now, the executive floor felt sterile, the air conditioned to perfection but lacking the human element that once defined their culture. That's when the idea hit him like a lightning bolt. What if he walked in their shoes? Not as the CEO in a tailored suit, but as someone completely unrecognizable. The concept of an undercover mission both terrified and excited him. After all, how could a billionaire possibly blend into the background? The following morning, Ethan stood before his reflection, barely recognizing himself. Gone was the Armani suit, replaced by well-worn jeans and a faded baseball cap. His expensive leather shoes were swapped for scuffed work boots. With a deep breath, he stepped into the elevator, heart pounding like a drum. The mirror reflected not a CEO, but just another face in the crowd. As the doors closed, he thought about the secret mission ahead and how this humble disguise might be the key to unlocking the corporate secrets that had been eluding him. He knew the path wouldn't be easy. The janitorial staff, often invisible to upper management, held a unique perspective, one that revealed the true character of the company's culture. Ethan was determined to uncover the hidden identity of the workplace dynamics, even if it meant facing discomfort and challenges he'd never experienced in his privileged position. Little did he know that this decision would lead to a humbling experience that would change everything he thought he knew about leadership and compassion. The first day would be the hardest, he predicted, walking into his own company as a stranger, pushing a mop cart instead of commanding boardroom meetings. But Ethan was prepared for the unexpected promotion of reality that awaited him. What he wasn't prepared for Was the kindness rewarded in the most unlikely of places, or the heartwarming twist that would emerge from the shadows of his secret mission? As the elevator descended to the lower levels, Ethan Hayes, the billionaire, in disguise, prepared to meet his true character in the reflection of his employees' eyes. Ethan Hayes pushed the service elevator button, his heart racing beneath the layers of his carefully constructed disguise. The mirrored walls reflected a man who looked nothing like the billionaire CEO employees had cheered for at last year's holiday party. His hands, now calloused from practicing with the mop, gripped the cart tightly as the elevator doors slid open to reveal the janitorial supply closet. This was it, the moment his secret mission truly began. The fluorescent lights of the basement level buzzed overhead as Ethan navigated the labyrinth of storage rooms and maintenance corridors. He'd studied the cleaning schedules for weeks, memorizing routes and avoiding peak traffic times. But theory and practice were two different beasts. A group of accountants rounded the corner unexpectedly, their laughter cutting through the silence. Ethan ducked behind a stack of copier paper, his breath catching. When they passed, he noticed their tense shoulders and the way they avoided eye contact with him. It was the first crack in the facade of corporate perfection. As he turned a corner, Ethan collided with a stack of file boxes, sending papers scattering across the floor. "Oops, clumsy me," he muttered, the colloquialism feeling strange on his chateau. A young intern rushed over to help, apologizing profusely for being in his way. Ethan smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "No worries, kid. Happens to the best of us." The intern's relief was palpable, a reminder of how invisible janitorial staff truly were. Ethan made a mental note. The hierarchy was more rigid than he'd imagined, creating an undercover boss reality he hadn't fully anticipated. The break room was his first real test. Janitors gathered there between shifts, sharing stories that painted a different picture of the company than Ethan's boardroom ever had. They spoke of executives who demanded impossible hours, of managers who played favorites, and of a culture where kindness was as rare as a paid vacation day. Ethan listened, his modifier of choice being a furrowed brow and sympathetic nods. When the conversation turned to the upcoming company gala, one janitor snorted, "They expect us to clean up their mess while they pretend everything's fine." Ethan's secret mission just got a whole lot clearer. By the end of his first shift, Ethan's feet ached, his back protested, and his perspective had shifted in ways no boardroom presentation ever could. As he clocked out, he spotted Olivia Smith, the head of HR, rushing past with a stack of reports. She glanced at him, offered a polite smile, and kept moving. Ethan watched her go, wondering how someone so attuned to employee well-being could remain oblivious to the world right beneath her feet. The corporate secrets were there, waiting to be uncovered. One swish of a mop, and one overheard conversation at a time. And Ethan Hayes, disguised as just another face in the crowd, was determined to reveal the truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along. Ethan Hayes had always known the janitorial staff worked hard, but stepping into their shoes was a wake-up call that left him shell-shocked. As he pushed his cart down the bustling hallways, employees parted like the Red Sea, their eyes darting away as if he were a ghost. "Hey there," he greeted a passing marketing specialist with a wave. The woman froze, her expression morphing from surprise to discomfort before she mumbled something unintelligible and quickened her pace. It was the first of many reminders of how deeply ingrained the hidden identity of service workers had become within the company's DNA. During lunch break, Ethan found himself perched on a dusty storage room chair, watching waves of employees flood the cafeteria. The aroma of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air, mingling with the harsh scent of cleaning supplies. He noticed how the janitors ate separately, huddled in corners or tucked into forgotten nooks, their presence as unnoticed as the dirt they spent hours scrubbing away. A veteran cleaner, Maria, slid into the seat beside him. "They don't see us," she said with a bitter smile, her words laced with resignation. "We're the ghosts keeping this place running." Ethan's chest tightened. In all his years as CEO, he'd never once invited these essential workers to the executive dining area. The realization sat heavy in his stomach, a stone of guilt. The afternoon brought its own brand of humiliation. Ethan arrived late to the supply closet, only to find it locked. Panicked, he flagged down a junior executive. Excuse me, I need to get in here." The man glanced at him, confusion flickering across his face before recognition dawned. Not of Ethan, but of his role. "Oh, right. The janitor." He fumbled with the key card, muttering about maintenance schedules. Ethan's blood boiled. This was the toxic culture he'd unwittingly allowed to fester. The man finally unlocked the door without a thank you, leaving Ethan to wonder how many times he'd been that dismissive executive in another life. As the day dragged on, Ethan's muscles screamed in protest. Who knew pushing a mop could be such a workout? His back ached, his knees begged for mercy, and his hands trembled from gripping the handle for hours. Yet, despite the physical toll, it was the emotional exhaustion that weighed heaviest. Every sideways glance, every hurried apology, every locked door reinforced the invisible hierarchy that crushed human connection. During a brief conversation with a maintenance supervisor, Ethan learned that several janitors worked double shifts just to make ends meet, their requests for better benefits consistently ignored by upper management. The kindness rewarded he'd hoped to find was buried beneath layers of neglect and systemic indifference. The final straw came when Ethan overheard a group of managers complaining about the messy floors while he mopped just feet away. One even went so far as to step over a puddle rather than acknowledge his presence. That night, as he collapsed into his minimalist apartment, a stark contrast to the penthouse he'd abandoned for the undercover mission, Ethan stared at the ceiling, mind racing. The corporate secrets weren't in the boardroom reports or the financial statements. They were in the whispered conversations, the averted eyes, and the unspoken pain of those who kept the wheels turning while remaining invisible. Tomorrow he'd seek out that rarest of commodities in his company, genuine human connection. Little did he know it would come wrapped in the warm smile of someone he'd underestimated his entire career. The fourth day of Ethan's undercover mission brought a ray of light into the otherwise monotonous and disheartening routine. As he wheeled his cart past the executive wing, a voice called out, "Excuse me, could you help me with these boxes?" Ethan turned to see a woman in her late 20s, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her eyes warm despite the stress lines etched around them. This was Emily Rodriguez, the executive secretary for the vice president of operations. Unlike others who either ignored him or dismissed him with a nod, Emily waited patiently as Ethan set down his supplies. "Sure thing," Ethan replied, using the colloquialism to sound more like a longtime employee. As he helped her maneuver the heavy boxes to her office, she chatted about the upcoming product launch, her enthusiasm palpable even through her exhaustion. "It's been a nightmare getting everyone on the same page," she sighed, "but I know we can pull it off." Ethan noticed how she didn't once glance at his name tag or treat him any differently than she would a colleague. This genuine respect was like a balm to his wounded ego. During a brief conversation in the elevator, Emily mentioned the lack of proper break areas for the janitorial staff, her voice tinged with frustration. "They work so hard, yet we don't even have a decent place for them to rest," she said, her compassion evident. Ethan's chest tightened. Here was someone who saw the hidden identity of the janitors, who understood their value beyond their roles. It was a refreshing contrast to the corporate secrets of indifference he'd uncovered so far. Later that afternoon, as Ethan mopped the vice president's office, Emily returned from a tense meeting. She paused, studying him for a moment before speaking. "You know, I've worked here for 5 years, and you're the first janitor who's ever made eye contact with me," she said softly. Ethan froze, the mop hanging mid-swing. "It's not your fault," she continued with a gentle smile. "The system makes us all invisible in different ways." Her words hung in the air, a heartwarming twist to the otherwise toxic environment. As the day wound down, Emily approached Ethan once more, this time with a stack of freshly baked cookies from her thermos. "I made these this morning," she said, offering them with a shy smile. "Thought you might appreciate a treat after all, this hard work." Ethan accepted the cookies, touched by her unexpected kindness. In that simple act, Emily had done more to humanize Ethan's experience than any boardroom policy ever could. She had become the rare exception in a company where employees were often reduced to their roles. And as Ethan savored the warm cookie, he couldn't help but wonder what other lessons this kind secretary might teach him about compassion wins in a world that often forgot its value. The following Tuesday, Ethan arrived at work with an empty lunch bag, a detail he'd carefully orchestrated the night before. As the morning routine settled into its familiar rhythm, he glanced around the break room, noting how the janitors ate, hastily, often standing or perched on the edges of tables. When Emily Rodriguez entered with her usual thermos and a paper bag, Ethan's heart quickened. This was the moment he'd planned for, the test that might reveal the true character of the few who noticed the hidden identity around them. "Hey, mind, if I join you?" Ethan asked, nodding to the empty seat across from her. Emily looked up, her eyes crinkling in a warm smile. "Of course not. Though I warn you, my lunch isn't exactly gourmet." She pulled out a sandwich wrapped in foil, her laughter light as she added, "My mom still packs my lunch sometimes. Says I need proper nutrition." Ethan felt a strange tightness in his chest. This woman's openness was a stark contrast to the guarded exchanges he'd witnessed among executives. As they ate in companionable silence, Ethan discovered his forgotten lunch bag with a dramatic sigh. "Ugh, I can't believe I left it in the car. Typical me, always forgetting something." Emily's brow furrowed with concern. "You didn't bring anything else?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. Ethan shook his head, playing the part of the forgetful janitor to perfection. Without hesitation, Emily slid her sandwich across the table. "Here, you can have half of mine. I'm not that hungry anyway." Ethan's eyes widened in genuine surprise. No one had ever offered him their food before, not as Ethan Hayes, and certainly not as the anonymous janitor. As he took the offered half, Emily shrugged off his thanks with a wave of her hand. "It's no big deal. Everyone deserves to eat, right?" Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of a revelation. In a company where employees were often reduced to their roles, Emily saw the person behind the uniform. The kindness, rewarded in her gesture, wasn't just about sharing food. It was an act of recognition, of humanity in a place where it was increasingly rare. Ethan felt a strange lump in his throat as he bit into the sandwich, homemade, with crusts cut off, and a note from Emily's mom tucked inside. It was the small details that made the gesture feel like a balm to his weary soul. The lunchtime ritual became a quiet anchor in Ethan's undercover mission. Each day, Emily would share not just her food, but stories of her family, her dreams of opening a bookstore, and her frustrations with the company's lack of empathy. Ethan listened, captivated not just by her words, but by the way she carried herself, with integrity and grace despite the corporate secrets that swirled around them. As they ate together on that first day, Ethan realized that Emily's compassion wasn't just a personal quality. It was a quiet rebellion against the toxicity that had seeped into the company culture. And as he savored the last bite of her mom's famous peanut butter and jelly sandwich, he knew this simple act of sharing would become the first domino in a chain of changes he was determined to set in motion. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan and Emily's lunchtime ritual became the highlight of both their days. They'd spread out their meals on the break room table, a motley assortment of Emily's homemade sandwiches and Ethan's increasingly frequent forgotten lunches. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, covering everything from the trivial, Emily's ongoing battle with her houseplants, to the profound, Ethan's veiled frustrations with corporate disconnect. "You know, I've worked here 5 years and I've never had a conversation like this with anyone," Emily admitted one afternoon, her voice tinged with melancholy. Ethan glanced up, catching the fleeting sadness in her eyes. "People here, they see my title, not me." He nodded, understanding, in a way he never had before. This was the heartwarming twist he hadn't anticipated, a connection forged in the shadows of corporate indifference. The bond they built was subtle but unshakable. Emily would save him a seat with a simple tilt of her head, a silent communication that spoke volumes. Ethan, in turn, would arrive with small gestures, a newspaper clipping that reminded him of her dream bookstore, or a packet of organic tea he'd noticed she preferred. These tiny acts of recognition became the foundation of their quiet friendship, a testament to the power of seeing someone truly. One rainy afternoon, as they huddled under Emily's umbrella, she laughed at his attempt to shield them both. "You're not very good at this, are you?" she teased, her warmth cutting through the gloom. Ethan's response came without thinking. "I'm learning." And he was, learning that leadership wasn't just about strategy and vision, but about these moments of genuine connection. The office drama continued around them, a constant undercurrent of tension that Emily seemed blissfully unaware of. Upper management's toxic behavior hadn't escaped Ethan's notice. He'd witnessed it firsthand, from the condescending remarks to the impossible demands. Yet, here was Emily, a beacon of kindness in a storm of corporate selfishness, treating him with the same respect she'd offer anyone else. It was a stark contrast that gnawed at Ethan. During a particularly heated exchange between a manager and a junior employee, Emily had stood up for the shaken young woman, her voice steady and firm. "We all make mistakes," she'd said, her compassion a subtle rebuke to the manager's harshness. Ethan watched from afar, his chest tight with a mix of pride and guilt. This woman deserved so much more than the company was giving her. As their friendship deepened, Ethan found himself dreading the moment he'd have to reveal his true identity. The weight of his secret mission pressed on him daily. The evidence he'd gathered of the company's unhealthy culture, the toxic executives who needed to be held accountable. But alongside that mission was the growing realization that Emily's kindness had become a compass for him, guiding him toward a leadership style he hadn't known he'd lost. He thought of the upcoming company gala, the perfect stage for his revelation. Yet the thought of losing Emily's unguarded friendship made his stomach churn. How could he reward her compassion without betraying the trust they'd built? The answer, he knew, would require the same bravery Emily demonstrated daily, by simply being herself. By the final week of his undercover stint, Ethan had compiled a detailed report of his findings, not just the toxic behaviors and corporate secrets, but also the names of employees who'd shown genuine kindness and integrity. Emily's name topped that list, her consistent empathy a rare gem in the company's culture. As he organized the files in his makeshift office, a corner of the break room after hours, Ethan couldn't help but smile at the irony. The CEO who'd set out to fix a broken system had instead been fixed by the simple acts of a secretary who saw the human behind the uniform. And as the company gala approached, Ethan prepared not just to shock his employees, but to rewrite the very DNA of the company. He'd built one act of compassion wins at a time. The turning point in Ethan's undercover mission came on a Wednesday morning, during a routine supply run to the executive wing. As he pushed his cart down the polished marble hallway, he overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. Two executives, senior vice presidents with whom he'd shared strategy sessions countless times, stood at the water cooler, their laughter sharp and dismissive. "Did you see the new janitor?" one sneered, his voice carrying clearly despite Ethan's efforts to melt into the shadows. "He's slower than a sloth on sedatives," the other executive snorted. "Probably expects us to do his job for him. Typical." Ethan's hands tightened on the cart handle, his knuckles whitening. This was the first direct encounter with the toxic behavior he'd suspected but hoped wasn't as pervasive as the rumors suggested. Later that afternoon, during a break room shift change, Ethan witnessed another side of the same ugliness. A junior accountant, her face pale and trembling, stood before the finance director's office. The director, a man Ethan had once considered a trusted lieutenant, barked orders through the glass window. These numbers are a joke. Do I need to hold your hand through basic addition? The woman flinched as if struck, her eyes darting to Ethan for a moment before she quickly averted them. Ethan's stomach churned. The toxicity wasn't just in isolated incidents. It was systemic, a cancer eating away at the company from within. And he, as the CEO in disguise, had unwittingly contributed to its growth by remaining detached from the day-to-day realities. The following week brought a public humiliation that tested Ethan's resolve. During a company-wide meeting, the head of marketing used Ethan's presence as a backdrop for a joke. "Even the janitor knows our ad campaign needs more edge," he quipped, gesturing toward Ethan with a careless wave. The room erupted in laughter, the sound grating on Ethan's nerves. He forced a smile, playing the part of the good-natured underling, but inside, fury burned. This was the corporate culture he'd built, a place where kindness was mocked and empathy seen as weakness. The hidden identity he'd adopted had given him a front-row seat to the very problems he'd sworn to fix. Ethan's interactions with upper management grew increasingly tense. One afternoon, as he mopped the boardroom floor after a particularly heated strategy session, the CFO strode in, barely glancing at him. "Hurry up, will you?" the man snapped, his impatience palpable. "We have real work to do." Ethan's response was automatic, the years of leadership training kicking in despite his disguise. "Everyone's work matters," he said quietly, without looking up. The CFO froze, his surprise evident even through the layers of Ethan's costume. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then the man scoffed, dismissing Ethan's words with a wave of his hand. "Cute sentiment. Now move." By the end of his third week undercover, Ethan had compiled a damning dossier of the company's unhealthy work culture. The evidence was clear. Toxic behavior wasn't just tolerated, it was rewarded. Executives who displayed the most arrogance climbed the fastest, while those who showed compassion were sidelined or mocked. The kindness rewarded Ethan had hoped to cultivate was actively discouraged. As he sat in his makeshift office, a corner of the break room after hours, he reviewed the footage and testimonials he'd gathered. The secret mission had revealed more than he'd bargained for, uncovering corporate secrets that demanded immediate action. But alongside the anger and disappointment was a strange sense of clarity. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but Ethan knew precisely where he needed to start. And it all began with the company gala, where he would finally reveal the true character of Hayes Industries, and perhaps in doing so, discover his own. The breaking point came during a particularly chaotic Friday afternoon. Ethan had been mopping the finance department's floors when Mr. Thompson, the head of accounting, stormed out of his office, his face purple with rage. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he barked at Ethan, who had accidentally bumped into him while rounding a corner. Before Ethan could apologize, Thompson pushed past him, knocking over the mop bucket in the process. Water spilled across the freshly cleaned floor, creating a slippery hazard. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. In all his weeks undercover, he'd never been directly confronted like this. His mind raced. Should he stand up for himself and risk blowing his cover, or retreat as the situation demanded? Before he could decide, a familiar voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. "Mr. Thompson, that's completely unacceptable," Emily said firmly, her presence suddenly commanding the room. She stepped between Ethan and the raging executive, her posture straight and unyielding. Thompson turned, clearly taken aback by the challenge. "Rodriguez, this doesn't concern you," he snapped, his authority accustomed to going unchallenged. Emily's response was immediate and unwavering. "Actually, it does. He's a human being, not just a pair of hands to do your bidding. If you have a problem with how he's doing his job, take it up with the facilities manager, not by berating him in the middle of the office." Her words hung in the air, a rare display of courage in a culture that rewarded subservience. The office fell silent, the usual hum of activity replaced by stunned silence. Ethan watched in awe as Emily's cheeks flushed with a mix of anger and determination. This was the same woman who shared her lunch and laughed at his terrible jokes. now standing toe-to-toe with a man who could easily make her life difficult. Thompson's face twisted with indignation. "You're overstepping your boundaries," he hissed. Emily's reply was quiet, but powerful. "No, you are. Respect goes both ways. And right now you're failing miserably." The standoff ended when Thompson stormed off, muttering about pointless distractions. The tension dissipated as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Ethan and Emily alone in the suddenly quiet space. Emily turned to Ethan, her expression softening. "You okay?" she asked gently, her earlier steel replaced with genuine concern. Ethan nodded, still processing what had just happened. "Thanks," he managed, his voice hoarse with emotion. Emily waved off his gratitude. "Don't mention it. No one deserves to be treated like that, not even the janitor." Her words carried a weight that resonated deeply with Ethan. This was compassion wins in its purest form. Not grand gestures, but quiet acts of integrity in the face of toxicity. In the days that followed, Ethan replayed the incident in his mind, analyzing every nuance of Emily's bravery. She hadn't just defended him, she'd challenged the very culture that allowed such behavior to thrive. It was a pivotal moment in his secret mission, one that solidified his resolve to dismantle the corporate secrets of indifference. Emily's actions had proven what Ethan had begun to suspect. Real leadership wasn't about title or authority, but about standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. And as the company gala approached, Ethan knew that Emily's courage would play a crucial role in the upcoming revelations, a role that would forever alter the trajectory of Hayes Industries. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan's undercover mission evolved from mere observation to meticulous documentation. Every evening, after the office had emptied and the janitorial staff had clocked out, Ethan would retreat to a small storage room he'd converted into his makeshift command center. The walls were lined with whiteboards covered in flowcharts and sticky notes, each one representing a piece of the toxic culture puzzle he was determined to solve. His laptop, hidden beneath a stack of cleaning supplies, contained meticulously organized files, recordings of dismissive conversations, photos of hazardous working conditions, and detailed logs of unfair treatment. Corporate secrets wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a hashtag he'd started using to categorize the growing mountain of evidence. One particularly revealing incident involved overhearing a conversation between two mid-level managers in the break room. They were discussing how to get rid of an employee who'd taken a mental health day, their words laced with frustration and a lack of empathy that made Ethan's blood run cold. Instead of intervening directly, a risk that could blow his cover, Ethan discreetly recorded the exchange using a small voice recorder hidden in his pocket. Later that night, as he transcribed the conversation, he felt a strange mix of anger and determination. This was the humbling experience he'd needed, a visceral reminder of why he'd undertaken this mission in the first place. The physical evidence was just as compelling. During a late-night cleaning shift, Ethan discovered that the storage closet used by the janitorial staff had no proper ventilation, despite housing several toxic cleaning chemicals. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This was a blatant violation of workplace safety regulations, and yet another example of how the company valued profit over people. He documented the scene with his phone's camera, making sure to capture every damning detail. As he uploaded the photos to his encrypted cloud storage, Ethan couldn't help but think of Emily and the other kind souls who worked in these conditions every day. This secret mission was no longer just about fixing a broken system. It was about righting specific wrongs. The most challenging part of his evidence gathering was maintaining his cover while interacting with the very people he was documenting. There were moments when executives would make dismissive remarks right in front of him, treating him as if he were invisible, a fact that highlighted the hidden identity problem within the company. On one occasion, the CFO made a derogatory comment about the janitorial staff's work ethic during a high-stakes meeting, completely unaware that Ethan was standing just outside the conference room door. The comment stung, not just because of the insult itself, but because it confirmed how deeply ingrained the toxic culture had become. Ethan forced himself to keep mopping, his movements steady despite the rage building inside him. This was the price of the mission, the emotional toll of witnessing disrespect firsthand. As the company gala approached, Ethan reviewed his collected evidence one final time. The folder contained over 120 documented incidents of toxic behavior, 47 instances of workplace safety violations, and countless testimonials from employees who trusted him with their stories. It was a comprehensive picture of a company that had lost its way, a billionaire in disguise who had seen the worst of his creation. But among the darkness there were flickers of light, the stories of kindness from employees like Emily, the moments of solidarity between co-workers, and the quiet acts of integrity that still managed to shine through. Ethan knew that revealing this evidence wouldn't just shock the attendees at the gala, it would force a reckoning. And as he prepared for the big reveal, he felt a strange sense of clarity. This was the moment he'd been building toward. The chance to transform the company he loved by exposing its flaws and rewarding the kindness rewarded that had given him hope during his darkest days undercover. The quiet moments shared between Ethan and Emily became the most cherished parts of Ethan's day. As their friendship grew, so did the weight of his secret. There were times when Emily would share stories of her childhood, her dreams of traveling the world, or her frustrations with the company's lack of work-life balance, and Ethan would find himself hanging on every word. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about her passion for literature, the way she laughed at his self-deprecating jokes, the way she treated everyone with genuine kindness. It all chipped away at the walls Ethan had built around his true identity. One evening, as they sat in the break room sharing a rare quiet moment, Emily mentioned a problem she'd been having with her apartment. "The landlord keeps ignoring my requests for repairs," she sighed, frustration evident in her voice. "I'm not handy at all. I can barely fix a leaky faucet." Ethan's heart ached at her vulnerability. In any other circumstance, he would have offered to help without a second thought. But as the janitor, he couldn't very well show up at her apartment with tools and a toolbox. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. He was more than capable of fixing her problems. Yet his disguise forced him to remain silent. The turning point came during a particularly heated argument between Emily and the vice president of marketing. The vice president had publicly criticized Emily's work in front of the entire department, accusing her of being too soft to handle executive responsibilities. Ethan watched from afar as Emily's face flushed with humiliation, her hands trembling, as she tried to maintain her composure. Every fiber of his being urged him to step forward, to defend her honor, to reveal his true identity, and put an end to the mistreatment. But he held back, knowing that such an action would compromise everything he'd worked so hard to achieve. As the days passed, Ethan found himself increasingly torn between his mission and his growing feelings for Emily. There were moments when he almost slipped, almost called her by her first name instead of Miss Rodriguez, almost shared details about his family that didn't align with his janitor persona, almost reached for her hand when she was upset. The weight of his hidden identity became a constant companion, a reminder of the line he walked between truth and deception. The final straw came during their weekly lunch routine. Emily pulled out a small book from her bag, a well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, one of Ethan's favorite novels. "I found it at a thrift store yesterday," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I've always wanted to read it, but never had the time." Ethan's heart clenched. He could have recommended his favorite passages, could have shared his deep appreciation for Austen's wit and social commentary, but instead he offered a vague response about it being a good book. As Emily talked about her plans to start a book club for the office staff, a dream he wholeheartedly supported but couldn't encourage for fear of exposure, Ethan made his decision. The company gala was just days away, and he couldn't carry this secret any longer. It was time to reveal his true character. Consequences be damned. The company gala was approaching, and the atmosphere at Hayes Industries was a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Invitations had been sent out, catering was confirmed, and the venue, a luxurious ballroom downtown, was ready to host the elite of the business world. For Ethan, the gala represented the perfect stage for his grand reveal. He meticulously planned every detail, from the timing of his announcement to the evidence he would present. The weight of his secret mission was becoming increasingly heavy, and he knew that the time to unveil the true character of Hayes Industries had come. In the days leading up to the event, Ethan found himself unusually distracted during his janitorial duties. His mind was preoccupied with thoughts of how the revelation would impact everyone, especially Emily. He had witnessed firsthand the toxic behavior of certain executives and had gathered irrefutable evidence of their misconduct. But there was also the other side of the coin. The employees who had shown genuine kindness and integrity, like Emily, who deserved to be recognized and rewarded. Ethan spent hours in his makeshift office in the storage room, reviewing the mountains of evidence he had collected. Photos, recordings, and detailed logs painted a clear picture of the company's unhealthy work culture. He organized everything meticulously, ensuring that when the time came, there would be no room for denial or excuses. The pressure was mounting, but so was his determination to bring about real change. As the day of the gala drew near, Ethan's nerves grew more frayed. He knew that revealing his identity as the undercover boss would shock everyone, but he also believed it was the only way to truly address the issues he had uncovered. The stakes were high, but Ethan was ready to take the risk, for the sake of the company, its employees, and the person who had shown him the most unexpected kindness. Rewarded. On the morning of the gala, Ethan stood in front of his reflection, carefully removing his janitor disguise. He slipped into his tailored suit, the familiar fabric a stark contrast to the uniform he had worn for weeks. As he adjusted his tie, he thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. The humbling experience of walking in the shoes of his employees had changed him in ways he couldn't have anticipated. He was no longer just a CEO. He was someone who understood the hidden identity of his company's culture and was ready to transform it. With a deep breath, Ethan Hayes, the billionaire CEO who had disguised himself as a janitor, prepared to attend the company gala, not as one of the guests, but as the man who would change everything. Little did he know that the heartwarming twist of the evening would be just as surprising for him as it was for everyone else. The grand ballroom was abuzz with chatter as guests mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The elegant decor and soft lighting created a stark contrast to the fluorescent-lit hallways Ethan had come to know during his undercover mission. He stood near the entrance, observing the scene with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. As the CEO of Hayes Industries, he was expected to make a speech, but this was not the speech anyone had anticipated. When the time came, Ethan stepped onto the stage, his presence commanding immediate attention. The room fell silent as he began to speak, his voice steady, but carrying an undercurrent of emotion. "Good evening, everyone," he started, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "Tonight, I'm here to share something that has profoundly changed my perspective on our company." The guests exchanged curious glances, sensing that this was not the usual ceremonial address. Ethan proceeded to recount his undercover experience, describing how he had disguised himself as a janitor to better understand the employee morale issues. As he spoke of the hidden identity of the janitorial staff and the corporate secrets he had uncovered, the audience's expression shifted from confusion to shock. The room was utterly still as he revealed, "For the past several weeks, I have been working among you, not as your CEO, but as one of the janitors." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and several people glanced around, trying to comprehend the revelation. He removed his suit jacket, revealing a plain shirt underneath, a stark contrast to his usual formal attire. "I have witnessed both the very best and the very worst of our company culture," Ethan continued, his voice firm. "And tonight, we begin a new chapter, one where kindness, integrity, and respect are not just words, but the foundation of everything we do. The weight of his words hung in the air as the reality of his undercover mission settled over the room. The guests were left stunned, their perceptions of the company and their CEO forever altered. The room was utterly silent as Ethan's words hung in the air. The guests stared at him, astonishment etched on their faces, trying to process the revelation that the CEO they knew had been right there among them, unseen and underestimated. The atmosphere was thick with shock and disbelief. Many exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. Some looked away, unable to meet Ethan's gaze, as the weight of his discovery settled over them. Ethan allowed the silence to linger for a moment, letting the gravity of his revelation sink in. Then, with a deep breath, he began to share what he had learned during his undercover mission. He spoke of the toxic behavior he had witnessed, the public humiliations, the dismissive attitudes, the lack of empathy and respect. His voice carried a quiet authority as he described specific incidents that had opened his eyes to the company's unhealthy work culture. The audience listened intently, their initial shock gradually transforming into a collective sense of shame and determination. As Ethan continued, he highlighted the contrast between the executives' actions and the compassion shown by many of the lower-level employees. He spoke of the kindness rewarded he had encountered, the secretaries who shared their lunches, the janitors who worked double shifts without complaint, the interns who helped him navigate the complex office politics. His words painted a vivid picture of a company divided, where the very people who kept the organization running were the ones who suffered the most. The audience's initial stunned silence gradually gave way to a growing murmur of agreement and support. People nodded, some with tears in their eyes, as Ethan's story resonated with their own experiences. The room, once filled with tension, now buzzed with a sense of unity and purpose. The applause that followed Ethan's speech was not just for him, but for the truth he had uncovered and the courage to share it. It was a moment of collective awakening, a heartwarming twist that signaled the beginning of a new chapter for Hayes Industries, a chapter where true character would be valued above title and position. With the audience's applause still echoing in the room, Ethan Hayes moved swiftly to address the issues he had uncovered. The first order of business was to hold those responsible for the toxic work culture accountable. Effective immediately, Ethan announced, his voice firm and resolute. Several executives will be terminated for their conduct and failure to uphold the values this company was founded on. The room fell silent once more as the gravity of his words sank in. The executives in question, caught off guard, exchanged nervous glances, their confidence shaken. Ethan wasted no time in outlining the specific offenses, public berating of employees, unfair treatment, and a general lack of empathy and respect. These behaviors have no place in our organization, he declared. Leadership is not about power and control. It is about inspiring and supporting those around you. The message was clear. The era of toxic executives was over. But Ethan's actions were not just about punishment. They were also about recognition and reward. He turned his attention to the employees who had shown genuine kindness and integrity during his undercover mission. These individuals, Ethan stated, holding up a list, have demonstrated the qualities we strive for in our company. They have treated their colleagues with respect, supported those in need, and worked diligently, often without recognition. The audience watched in anticipation as Ethan began to call out names, each one met with applause and nods of approval. Among those recognized was Emily Rodriguez, the executive secretary whose compassion and empathy had left a lasting impression on Ethan. Her promotion to executive assistant was announced to the room, a testament to the positive impact one person could have on the company culture. The audience erupted in applause as Emily stepped forward, her face a mix of surprise and gratitude. It was a powerful moment, a clear signal that compassion wins and that the company was committed to valuing its most dedicated and kind-hearted employees. As Ethan continued to announce the changes, The focus shifted to Emily Rodriguez. The room fell silent as Ethan explained how Emily's consistent display of kindness, empathy, and integrity had been instrumental in shaping his understanding of the company's culture. "Emily," Ethan said, his voice warm with admiration, "you have shown what it truly means to be an ambassador of our company's values. Your compassion, your willingness to stand up for what is right, and your dedication to your work make you an inspiration to us all." The audience watched as Emily stood up, her face a picture of surprise and emotion. She had always been a diligent and kind-hearted employee. But this moment of recognition was something she had never expected. As she made her way to the stage, the room erupted in applause, a testament to the respect and admiration her colleagues had for her. Ethan handed Emily her new job title and responsibilities, officially promoting her to executive assistant.
"This is not just a promotion," he emphasized. "This is a recognition of the positive impact one person can have on an entire organization. Emily, you have my deepest respect and gratitude." The tears in Emily's eyes spoke volumes as she accepted
her new role, a heartwarming twist that highlighted how genuine kindness could lead to unexpected promotion and recognition. The promotion of Emily was a powerful symbol of the changes to come. It sent a clear message that the company was committed to valuing and rewarding those who embodied the principles of respect and empathy. As the applause died down, Ethan's speech continued, outlining a new era of leadership and a commitment to creating a work environment where every employee felt valued and respected. With the toxic executives removed and the recognition of deserving employees complete, Ethan Hayes laid out his vision for the future of Hayes Industries. The room, now filled with a sense of hope and renewal, listened intently as he outlined his plans for a more respectful and empathetic work environment. "We are entering a new era," Ethan declared, his voice filled with conviction. "An era where leadership is defined not by titles and authority, but by compassion, integrity, and a genuine commitment to the well-being of every employee." Ethan introduced several initiatives aimed at transforming the company culture. These included regular employee feedback sessions, mental health support programs, and a renewed focus on work-life balance. He also announced the establishment of a committee to ensure accountability and transparency in all company practices. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, sensing that real change was on the horizon. As the gala drew to a close, Ethan found himself seeking out Emily. The events of the evening had brought them closer, their shared experiences during his undercover mission creating a bond that was impossible to ignore. They stood together near a large window overlooking the city, the night sky a canvas of twinkling stars behind them. "Thank you," Emily said softly, turning to Ethan, "for seeing what others didn't, for recognizing the value in kindness and integrity." Ethan smiled, his eyes meeting hers. "I didn't just see it," he replied. "I experienced it, through you and so many others who make this company what it truly is." The air between them was charged with a new understanding, a deeper connection that had blossomed from their unlikely friendship. As they stood there, the future of Hayes Industries seemed brighter than ever. The company had turned a corner, leaving behind the toxic culture of the past and embracing a new era of respect and empathy. And for Ethan and Emily, the heartwarming twist of their journey was just beginning. A story of how an undercover boss found not just a new perspective on leadership, but a genuine connection that would help guide the company toward a more compassionate and successful future. In a world where corporate executives often live in a bubble, disconnected from the daily realities of their employees, Ethan Hayes dared to do the unthinkable. He disguised himself as a janitor and stepped into the shoes of those who kept his company running behind the scenes. What he discovered shocked him to the core, a toxic culture where kindness was undervalued and employees were treated as invisible cogs in a machine. But in the midst of this harsh reality, Ethan encountered Emily Rodriguez, a secretary whose compassion and integrity shone brightly. Her simple acts of kindness, sharing her lunch, treating him with respect, revealed a different truth about human connection and empathy in the workplace. As Ethan's journey unfolded at the company gala, the shocking reveal of his true identity turned the organization upside down. The toxic executives faced consequences for their actions, while employees who exemplified genuine kindness were rewarded with unexpected promotions and recognition. This isn't just a story about a CEO learning valuable lessons. It's a powerful reminder of how empathy and compassion can transform organizations from the inside out. When leaders step out of their comfort zones and truly see their employees, they unlock the potential for meaningful change and a more respectful workplace culture. So what did you think of this incredible story? Were you surprised by the dramatic twist at the company gala? Did you expect the kind secretary to play such a pivotal role in transforming the company? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know which moments impacted you the most. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. We're dedicated to bringing you more inspiring tales that challenge conventional thinking and highlight the power of compassion in leadership. Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll explore even more surprising insights into what makes organizations truly successful.